They should have stayed out of my way.
Beekeepers is a special program.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
The Beekeeper 2, while still shrouded in secrecy, allows for detailed extrapolation based on the narrative, stylistic, and thematic cues established by the first film and the known production details. At the story's core, Adam Clay is likely to confront a layered series of threats, beginning with the immediate consequence of his previous actions. In the first film, Clay dismantled a criminal corporate network that manipulated vulnerable individuals, resulting in both personal satisfaction and unintended systemic consequences. The sequel seems poised to explore the fallout of these actions on multiple levels: the Beekeeper organization itself, rival clandestine groups seeking power, and governmental institutions aware of Clay's extrajudicial interventions. The predicted narrative arc opens with a quieter, tension-filled sequence establishing Clay's continued retreat into pastoral life, reflecting on his past, and interacting with his hives. These scenes are crucial. They serve both as a visual and thematic contrast to the ensuing chaos and reinforce the symbolic duality of his character, patient, meticulous, yet capable of sudden, decisive violence. Here, the camera work will likely employ wide, contemplative shots, natural lighting, and subtle depth of field effects to emphasize Clay's isolation and introspection. Moments of beer-related activity, the careful tending of combs, the observation of hive dynamics, mirror his analytical approach to the complex human networks he must navigate. Conflict arises when Clay is approached by new adversaries, likely figures connected to global intelligence or rival beekeeper factions. This intrusion initiates a narrative rhythm alternating between personal investigation, action sequences, and political intrigue. The plot may interweave three primary threads: Clay's direct confrontations with external threats, interactions with returning characters like Verona Parker and Matt Wiley, and internal conflicts within the Beekeeper organization itself. These threads intersect in escalating sequences that test Clay's tactical brilliance, moral compass, and emotional resilience. Fight sequences are anticipated to be both technically precise and narratively meaningful. Clay's hand-to-hand combat will likely blend multiple martial arts disciplines with environmental improvisation, leveraging surroundings in urban, industrial, and natural landscapes. Extended single-take sequences, dynamic camera movement, and precise choreography will emphasize his agility, strength, and analytical combat approach. Antagonists will likely vary in skill and style, from technologically augmented operatives to physically imposing fighters, providing diversity and intensity in the action. Vehicle chases, vertical combat on rooftops or stairwells, and close-quarter conflicts will accentuate Clay's adaptability and strategic foresight. Each sequence will not simply serve spectacle but reinforce character psychology, narrative stakes, and thematic resonance. Psychologically, Clay is a study in controlled intensity. The sequel provides an opportunity to explore the cumulative effects of repeated trauma, the burden of vigilantism, and the ethical ambiguity inherent in operating outside institutional oversight. While stoic and controlled on the surface, subtle cues, micro-expressions, hesitations, or private moments of reflection, may reveal the emotional cost of his choices. Verona Parker and Matt Wiley provide narrative mirrors to Clay's ethical framework. Parker's procedural adherence and Wiley's intermediary role highlight the tension between institutional authority and personal morality, emphasizing that justice is multifaceted and morally contingent. The new characters introduced deepen the psychological and narrative complexity. Yara Shahidi's operative may embody the tension between youthful idealism and hardened pragmatism, offering both mentorship and challenge to Clay. Pawn Clementief's character could serve as a morally ambiguous figure, testing Clay's ethical limits and strategic patience. Adam Copeland's character, a physically dominant adversary, introduces the visceral, corporeal stakes that contrast with Clay's cerebral approach. The interplay between these figures establishes a rich web of alliances, rivalries, and shifting loyalties, allowing the narrative to explore trust, betrayal, and the fluidity of ethical boundaries. The predicted plot can be broken into key sequences: an opening exposition in pastoral settings, inciting incidents where Clay uncovers conspiratorial activity, escalating mid-film sequences blending investigation, combat, and infiltration, a climactic confrontation spanning multiple environments, and a resolution that balances action spectacle with moral and thematic closure. Throughout, visual motifs related to bees, hives, and interconnectivity reinforce the thematic exploration of complex systems, the interplay of individual action with collective consequences, and the delicate balance of order and chaos. Cinematically, the sequel will likely employ contrast-rich lighting, integrating warm, natural tones in reflective sequences with stark, high-contrast lighting during conflict and urban infiltration. Editing may blend rapid cuts for high-tension sequences with extended takes during character-focused or reflective moments. Sound design will be immersive. The ambient buzz of bees, environmental sounds, diegetic effects from combat, and layered orchestral/electronic scoring will synchronize with narrative rhythm to create heightened emotional and sensory engagement. Dialogue style may be economical yet impactful, reflecting Clay's stoicism and tactical focus. Conversations with allies may blend procedural language with moral inquiry, while exchanges with antagonists are likely to emphasize wit, ideological conflict, and psychological tension. Subtext will carry significant weight, with silences, gestures, and visual framing conveying as much meaning as spoken words. The expanded franchise mythology may explore the historical origins of the Beekeeper organization, detailing its secretive structure, ethical code, and global influence. This background could provide narrative depth, offering audiences insight into the philosophical underpinnings of Clay's actions and the strategic rationale of allies and adversaries alike. Exploration of this mythology allows the sequel to function both as a continuation and as a broader world-building exercise, setting the stage for future sequels, spin-offs, or transmedia expansions. Thematically, the sequel will likely interrogate the balance between justice and legality, the interplay of individual agency with systemic power, and the ethical consequences of unilateral action. These questions are grounded in contemporary anxieties around digital vulnerability, institutional corruption, and globalized criminality. By framing Clay's journey within these concerns, the narrative achieves resonance beyond the immediate spectacle of action, offering audiences intellectual and emotional engagement alongside kinetic thrills. Marketing strategy will likely leverage narrative secrecy, selective character reveals, and controlled promotional materials to build anticipation while maintaining suspense. Fan engagement through speculation, discussion, and fan-made content amplifies the cultural footprint, creating an interactive ecosystem that enhances audience investment and ensures heightened attention upon release. In conclusion, The Beekeeper 2 promises to expand the franchise through an intricate interplay of narrative depth, stylistic innovation, thematic exploration, and world-building. Adam Clay's journey from pastoral tranquility to high-stakes global conflict provides both a character-driven anchor and a thematic lens through which to explore justice, morality, and human resilience. The film's potential success lies in its ability to combine kinetic spectacle with thoughtful storytelling, delivering a cinematic experience that is at once thrilling, intellectually engaging, and culturally resonant. By integrating complex character psychology, sophisticated action choreography, immersive cinematography, and multilayered thematic exploration, The Beekeeper 2 is poised to become a benchmark for contemporary action cinema, expanding both the narrative universe and the philosophical depth of the franchise. As The Beekeeper 2 progresses past its opening sequences, the film gradually amplifies tension on multiple levels, both external and internal. Adam Clay, who has long been a master of anticipation and patience, begins to face challenges that are not purely physical. The rogue faction of the Beekeepers, composed of former operatives who have rejected the organization's traditional hierarchy, emerges as a destabilizing force. Unlike the first film, where threats were primarily personal or localized, the sequel paints a global canvas: financial markets destabilized, cyber infrastructures compromised, and political systems teetering on the brink of chaos. The rogue operatives, led by Palm Clementief's character, are not merely antagonists in the classical sense, they embody the ideological friction within the organization itself, challenging its very purpose. This internal conflict enriches the narrative, forcing Clay to confront not only his physical adversaries but the philosophical underpinnings of the world he once served. One of the mid-film sequences that stands out, and which showcases both Giganto's directorial vision and Statham's physical command, occurs in a sprawling European port city under cover of darkness. Clay's mission is to intercept sensitive intelligence before it reaches the rogue faction, a task complicated by both technological surveillance and human opposition. The scene unfolds with a deliberate, almost predatory pacing. Clay maneuvers through crowded streets, shadows masking his approach, his every movement a study in efficiency. Drones hover above, their mechanical hum a constant reminder that this is no ordinary confrontation. Clay neutralizes guards with a combination of hand-to-hand combat and improvised tools, every action choreographed to feel authentic while maintaining cinematic flair. What makes this sequence exemplary is the tension derived not solely from violence but from Clay's interaction with the environment, narrow alleys, waterlogged docks, and neon-lit warehouses, each offering both opportunity and risk. The cinematography emphasizes perspective shifts, moving from wide establishing shots that underscore the urban expanse to close-ups capturing micro-expressions, beads of sweat, and subtle calculations, reinforcing Clay's analytical mind even amidst chaos. Parallel to Clay's mission, the narrative delves deeper into the FBI subplot. Verona Parker and Matt Wiley are forced to navigate a landscape where Clay's actions, though legally questionable, align with the prevention of a larger catastrophe. Their arc in this section of the film explores moral ambiguity in law enforcement, the tension between procedural obedience and the practical necessity of utilizing unconventional actors to counter unconventional threats. Parker, in particular, demonstrates evolution from skeptic to reluctant collaborator, her growing understanding of Clay's motives nuanced by both admiration and fear. Wiley, on the other hand, is portrayed struggling with personal conscience, questioning whether the ends truly justify the means when morality and legality diverge so sharply. Their perspectives provide a counterbalance to Clay's narrative, offering viewers a lens through which to examine the ethical dilemmas at the film's core. New character dynamics further intensify the storyline. Yara Shahidi's intelligence analyst is revealed to have infiltrated global cyber networks, intercepting communications and decrypting codes that Clay could not access through conventional means. Her character brings a cerebral intensity to the proceedings, showing how modern conflict extends beyond the physical realm into digital landscapes. The collaboration between Clay and Shahidi's character forms one of the narrative's most compelling axes. Physical precision meets intellectual rigor. The synergy between them underscores a broader thematic motif of the film, the necessity of integrating old-world skills with new-world technology, a reconciliation of tradition and innovation in the age of asymmetrical warfare. As mid-film escalation reaches its zenith, the narrative orchestrates a high-stakes confrontation that exemplifies the franchise's ambition to blend narrative tension with kinetic spectacle. In a sprawling industrial facility repurposed as a rogue operational base, Clay faces a multi-layered gauntlet, armed operatives, environmental hazards, and psychological manipulation. Here, Giganto's directorial signature is fully realized. The combat sequences are a choreography of brutality and precision, emphasizing spatial awareness, timing, and strategy over mere spectacle. Clay utilizes improvised weapons, environmental elements, and calculated feints to neutralize multiple opponents in sequences that last several minutes without cutting away, sustaining tension and immersion. This approach not only highlights the character's expertise but also allows the audience to inhabit the physical and cognitive experience of a highly trained operative navigating complex threats. Within these sequences, Palm Clementif's character emerges as both a mirror and a foil to Clay. Her philosophy, unrestricted by Clay's moral code, poses the central ideological challenge of the film. She is not simply an antagonist to be defeated, she represents a credible alternative worldview, questioning the necessity of restraint and advocating for unbounded power in pursuit of efficiency. Their confrontations are as much verbal and philosophical as they are physical, with dialogue that probes themes of loyalty, justice, and the cost of moral compromise. These interactions deepen the narrative, transforming action scenes into character studies, where each strike and parry is imbued with ethical weight. Simultaneously, Adam Copeland's mercenary character introduces an unpredictable variable. Initially appearing as an adversary, his motivations are gradually revealed to be aligned with profit rather than ideology. Copeland's presence creates narrative ambiguity, alliances shift, loyalties are questioned, and even Clay must constantly evaluate whether assistance or resistance is the more strategic course. These dynamics are crucial in sustaining tension across multiple narrative layers, ensuring that the audience is never certain which characters can be trusted, which motives are genuine, and which outcomes are inevitable. The film's visual and auditory style reinforces its thematic ambitions. Lighting shifts dynamically between the stark, cold interiors of secure facilities and the warm, shadowed tones of clandestine meetings, mirroring the duality of Clay's existence between isolation and engagement. Sound design amplifies tension subtly, the click of a gun chambering, the faint whir of drones, the echo of footsteps across metal catwalks, all heightening a sense of immersion. The musical score, an imagined blend of minimalist electronic motifs interspersed with orchestral flourishes, serves as both narrative underscore and emotional guide, accentuating suspense, urgency, and moments of introspection without overwhelming the scene. As the narrative moves toward its climax, the stakes are raised both physically and psychologically. Clay discovers the rogue faction's ultimate plan, a multi-pronged operation designed to destabilize financial systems and manipulate international power structures. The culmination of these threats positions Clay not merely as a reactive force but as a proactive agent tasked with neutralizing a global crisis. The climax sequences, set across multiple locations including urban landscapes, remote compounds, and high-altitude aerial operations, showcase the scale of ambition. Here, all threads converge: Clay's mastery of combat, Shahidi's digital intelligence, Parker and Wiley's enforcement insights, and the ideological confrontation with Clementief's character. Each element contributes to a tense, multi-layered resolution that is at once thrilling and emotionally resonant. The finale imagines a confrontation that is both physically and symbolically charged. Clay and Clementief's character engage in a battle that spans multiple levels of a decaying skyscraper, their conflict reflecting the larger ideological struggle of the film. While action sequences dominate, the choreography communicates narrative information: every move, every fall, every use of the environment conveys the stakes, the skill disparity, and the moral undertones. The final resolution is carefully balanced: the rogue faction is neutralized, Clay's interventions prevent global disaster, and yet the ideological questions remain unresolved, preserving the franchise's capacity for further exploration. Even in resolution, The Beekeeper 2 emphasizes character growth. Clay, though victorious, is visibly affected by the ideological and personal trials he endured. The partnership with Shahidi's character hints at a potential ongoing collaboration, expanding the operational scope of the Beekeepers in a way that is both practical and narratively fertile. Parker and Wiley are left with a renewed understanding of the complexity of law, morality, and unconventional justice, setting the stage for future engagements. The careful balance of resolution and open-endedness ensures audience satisfaction while preserving narrative momentum for potential sequels. Production-wise, this segment imagines Giganto's approach to filming these sequences. Stunt coordination would involve weeks of rehearsal, wire work, and precision timing. Camera rigs would employ motion tracking and dynamic lenses to capture uninterrupted sequences of combat, preserving spatial awareness while amplifying intensity. Practical effects dominate, including controlled demolitions, breakaway props, and real-time pyrotechnics, all contributing to the tangible realism that distinguishes the franchise. Editing choices maintain narrative clarity while sustaining visceral engagement, with rhythm carefully calibrated to reflect tension, urgency, and character perspective. Thematically, the sequel continues to explore contemporary anxieties in a globalized, technologically interconnected world. Issues of surveillance, loyalty, ethical compromise, and the moral ambiguity of power structures permeate both dialogue and action. Clay embodies the tension between individual skill and systemic necessity, providing a lens through which the audience can engage with questions of justice, accountability, and the cost of intervention. The expansion of the Beekeeper's mythology introduces historical context and ideological diversity, enriching the narrative universe and allowing for thematic resonance beyond the immediate plot. As production neared completion, attention turned to the release strategy for The Beekeeper 2, which is as carefully orchestrated as the film's narrative itself. The film's distribution plan reflects a dual objective: to maximize global box office potential while maintaining the integrity and mystique of the story world. Coordinated worldwide marketing efforts are being implemented to ensure that audiences from diverse regions feel both connected to and intrigued by the narrative. In alignment with contemporary viewing habits, the studio has designed a staggered promotional rollout. Early promotional material focused on character-focused teaser visuals, emphasizing Adam Clay's return, the expanding Beekeeper organization, and hints at global-scale threats without disclosing plot specifics. This restrained approach creates anticipation, allowing the audience to speculate and engage with the mythology prior to the official trailer release. The distribution strategy leverages both traditional theatrical windows and streaming platforms to reach a broad demographic. Amazon MGM Studios, responsible for worldwide distribution, has positioned the film to premiere in major markets with simultaneous releases across select regions. This approach maximizes audience accessibility and revenue potential while reinforcing the sense of event cinema that the franchise seeks to cultivate. For territories where cultural and market conditions require adaptation, localized marketing campaigns highlight specific character arcs, narrative themes, and action set pieces that resonate most strongly with regional audiences. By calibrating messaging in this way, the film maintains its global appeal while fostering cultural relevance and emotional engagement. Audience anticipation for the sequel has been bolstered by the return of key cast members and the addition of carefully selected new actors. Jason Statham's reprisal of Adam Clay anchors the franchise, providing continuity and a familiar touchstone for viewers. His performance, blending physical prowess with emotional depth, has been described in early reports as one of his most nuanced roles to date. New additions to the cast are positioned not only to diversify the narrative but to introduce conflicts, alliances, and relational dynamics that enrich the storytelling. Each character is crafted to challenge Clay's worldview, push him to reconsider operational assumptions, and confront the audience with complex ethical questions. This emphasis on character-driven tension ensures that action sequences carry both kinetic energy and narrative significance, elevating the film above conventional thriller fare. Critical reception is expected to focus on several key elements. Foremost among these is the balance between action spectacle and thematic depth. Early insider commentary suggests that the sequel delivers higher stakes, more sophisticated plotting, and expanded character exploration compared to the original. Reviewers are likely to evaluate how successfully the film integrates philosophical and ethical considerations within a high-octane narrative, as well as the effectiveness of its visual storytelling, cinematography, and sound design. The seamless coordination of fight choreography, location utilization, and narrative pacing positions The Beekeeper 2 to be praised for both technical execution and narrative ambition, highlighting the director's vision and the cast's commitment to the material. Thematic continuity remains a priority, ensuring that the sequel not only expands the Beekeeper universe but deepens the franchise's moral and philosophical resonance. By exploring issues such as justice, accountability, surveillance, and identity, the film encourages audiences to engage with larger questions beyond immediate plot outcomes. The ethical dilemmas faced by Clay serve as mirrors to societal challenges, illustrating the tension between individual action and systemic influence, between moral principle and strategic necessity. These narrative layers provide audiences with opportunities for reflection, discussion, and engagement that extend well beyond the theater experience. Franchise expansion is a strategic consideration that informs multiple aspects of production. The Beekeeper 2 has been designed with the potential for future sequels, spin-offs, and transmedia storytelling. Narrative threads are intentionally left open, introducing mysteries, organizations, and unresolved conflicts that can be explored in subsequent installments. This approach ensures long-term engagement with the brand, allowing for iterative expansion without compromising the self-contained nature of the film. By balancing resolution with intrigue, the sequel creates a narrative ecosystem capable of sustaining multiple storylines, character arcs, and thematic explorations over time. Marketing strategies are further informed by audience analytics and engagement patterns observed during the first film's release. Social media interactions, fan speculation, and early interviews provide insight into what elements resonate most strongly with the audience. These insights guide promotional decisions, from teaser content to interviews highlighting the creative process. The studio has also emphasized transparency about the production timeline, sharing milestones such as principal photography, post-production updates, and test screenings. This level of engagement fosters a sense of inclusion and investment, enhancing the audience's anticipation and deepening their connection to the franchise. From a narrative perspective, the sequel's attention to detail extends to the technological, environmental, and strategic realism of the Beekeeper universe. Operational sequences integrate authentic surveillance protocols, tactical maneuvers, and decision-making processes that reflect contemporary practices in intelligence and security operations. While dramatized for cinematic impact, these elements ground the story in realism and provide audiences with a sense of plausibility. Environmental factors, from architectural layouts to urban logistics, are carefully considered, influencing both action choreography and narrative pacing. This meticulous attention to operational realism distinguishes the sequel from other action thrillers, positioning it as a thoughtfully constructed, immersive cinematic experience. Character arcs continue to be central to the storytelling. Adam Clay's journey in The Beekeeper 2 is not simply defined by external conflict but by his evolving understanding of his role, responsibility, and identity within the Beekeeper organization. Relationships with allies, mentors, and adversaries serve as catalysts for reflection, forcing him to question assumptions and confront moral ambiguity. These interpersonal dynamics are intricately woven into the action sequences, ensuring that narrative stakes remain intimately connected to character development. By integrating personal growth, ethical decision-making, and relational complexity, the film achieves a level of emotional resonance often absent in genre-focused sequels. The sequel also strategically addresses pacing and tension. Narrative arcs are constructed to provide continuous engagement, alternating between high-intensity sequences and contemplative character moments. This rhythm enables audiences to process the narrative stakes, absorb character motivations, and anticipate future developments while maintaining immersion in the cinematic world. Carefully calibrated suspense sequences, layered conflicts, and incremental reveals contribute to a sustained sense of tension, ensuring that audiences remain emotionally and cognitively invested throughout the runtime. By balancing spectacle with story, The Beekeeper 2 achieves a narrative sophistication that supports both entertainment and intellectual engagement. Finally, the broader cultural and societal implications of the film are notable. The Beekeeper 2 reflects contemporary anxieties surrounding surveillance, privacy, and systemic power structures. By embedding these concerns within an accessible, high-stakes narrative framework, the film encourages viewers to engage with ethical questions that extend beyond the cinema. The combination of thrilling action, moral complexity, and social relevance positions the sequel not merely as a continuation of a story but as a cultural touchstone within the modern action thriller genre. Through its integration of narrative, thematic, and technical excellence, The Beekeeper 2 exemplifies the evolution of franchise storytelling, demonstrating how sequels can expand worlds, deepen character exploration, and engage audiences on multiple levels simultaneously. In The Beekeeper 2, character development is expected to assume a central role, elevating the film beyond conventional action narratives. Adam Clay, as the moral and operational fulcrum of the story, is poised for the deepest evolution yet seen in the franchise. While the first film presented Clay primarily as a reactionary figure responding to personal tragedy and systemic corruption, the sequel allows for proactive exploration of his identity, past, and evolving ethical framework. Clay's silence and controlled demeanor, previously emblematic of stoicism and focus, may now mask a growing internal conflict arising from escalating responsibilities, the complexity of modern threats, and the increasing moral ambiguity of his environment. This internal struggle is likely to manifest through both dialogue and action, terse, loaded exchanges with allies and antagonists, silent observational moments that reflect calculated strategy, and combat sequences that convey not just physical dominance but also moral clarity and consequence. Inter-character dynamics will be particularly vital in shaping narrative tension and thematic resonance. Emmy Raver-Lampman's return as Verona Parker provides a continuation of the emotionally charged and ethically nuanced relationship established in the first film. Their interactions are expected to evolve from initial distrust and reluctant collaboration to a more complex interplay of respect, moral challenge, and subtle tension, reflecting both the shared trauma of prior events and their divergent approaches to justice. Verona's character, as an FBI agent, represents institutional morality and procedural constraint, often juxtaposed against Clay's independent, extrajudicial methods. This dynamic establishes a recurring moral debate that may form the intellectual backbone of the sequel, the tension between codified law and personal ethics, procedural order and immediate justice, societal constraints and individual responsibility. New characters further expand the narrative's interpersonal complexity. Pawn Clementief's likely portrayal as either a rival operative or morally ambiguous figure introduces a foil to Clay's methods. Her character could operate as both adversary and mirror, reflecting what Clay might become if his moral code were subverted, abandoned, or compromised. This duality allows the narrative to explore themes of choice, consequence, and ethical relativism, dramatizing the potential paths a trained operative may follow when confronted with power, autonomy, and systemic corruption. Yara Shahidi's anticipated role in intelligence or cyber operations adds another layer of interaction, bringing analytical rigor, technological expertise, and moral idealism into the narrative. Her presence can create both cooperative and conflicting dynamics with Clay, emphasizing generational and methodological contrasts while enriching the plot's intellectual and operational dimension. Adam Copeland's role, characterized by physical confrontation potential, may serve as a tangible embodiment of threat, representing operational and ideological opposition that forces Clay to confront both external danger and internal doubt. Potential plot twists in The Beekeeper 2 are likely to emerge from the interplay between systemic complexity, character decisions, and unforeseen consequences. The first film concluded with Clay's escape, leaving open multiple narrative possibilities: the pursuit of justice by governmental entities, retaliatory actions from exposed conspirators, or emergent threats from new international actors. The sequel may explore the consequences of Clay's unilateral actions, including unintended harm, the destabilization of fragile institutional systems, or the exposure of the beekeepers themselves to public scrutiny. Such twists allow for morally complex storytelling, highlighting the tension between intention and outcome, and reinforcing the franchise's thematic preoccupation with accountability, ethics, and the cost of intervention. The narrative may also integrate multilevel strategic conflicts, where Clay must navigate simultaneous operational challenges. These could include the infiltration of sophisticated cyber networks, high-stakes negotiation with morally ambiguous allies, and direct physical confrontations with adversaries possessing equivalent skill, resources, and motivation. By layering these conflicts, the film can maintain a consistent narrative tension that engages audiences both intellectually and viscerally, providing a dynamic pacing that oscillates between cerebral intrigue and kinetic action. This narrative structure also permits the exploration of complex problem-solving, moral reasoning, and adaptive strategy, positioning Clay as both thinker and actor within a multifaceted world. Character arcs in the sequel are likely to emphasize evolution through adversity. Clay may confront the limits of his skill, the fragility of his moral code, and the consequences of isolation versus collaboration. Allies introduced in the sequel may challenge, complement, or undermine his approach, reflecting a realistic and dynamic network of interpersonal tension. These evolving relationships can provide emotional resonance, highlighting themes of trust, betrayal, loyalty, and moral compromise. For example, interactions between Clay and Clementief's character may oscillate between confrontation and reluctant cooperation, illustrating the complexity of aligning ethical imperatives within a world populated by divergent moral philosophies. Similarly, collaboration with Shahidi's character may explore the tension between analytical, technological approaches and experiential, action-oriented problem-solving, underscoring generational, methodological, and ethical contrasts. The sequel is also positioned to introduce broader narrative arcs that reflect geopolitical and societal stakes. With global conspiracies, technological threats, and transnational networks likely in play, the narrative may explore the intersection of individual action and systemic consequence. Clay's interventions, while aimed at immediate justice, may have ripple effects across political, corporate, and criminal structures. These repercussions can generate additional tension, forcing characters to negotiate consequences, anticipate responses, and adapt to rapidly evolving circumstances. The narrative may also explore ethical dilemmas arising from collateral impact, the justification of extreme measures, and the evaluation of risk versus benefit, reinforcing the franchise's thematic emphasis on moral reasoning within high-stakes operational contexts. Visual storytelling in The Beekeeper 2 is expected to complement and amplify these character and plot dynamics. Giganto's direction is likely to leverage cinematic techniques that reflect psychological states, moral tension, and narrative progression. Composition, lighting, and color may serve as extensions of character identity and thematic intent, signaling moral ambiguity, threat intensity, or ethical clarity. Kinetic camera work and meticulously choreographed action sequences can serve not merely as spectacle but as narrative language, revealing character priorities, strategy, and ethical decision-making in real time. In this manner, the visual style and narrative content are seamlessly integrated, reinforcing thematic cohesion and audience engagement. Speculative storylines may also include complex betrayals, moral quandaries, and the revelation of hidden organizational agendas. The Beekeeper organization, previously an unseen yet influential force, may play a more active role in guiding or constraining Clay's actions. Internal divisions within the organization could surface, challenging loyalty, authority, and operational coherence. Such internal tension introduces narrative unpredictability, compelling characters to navigate not only external threats but also internal ethical and strategic conflicts. These dynamics, coupled with emergent technological, geopolitical, and interpersonal challenges, create a rich narrative tapestry in which action, strategy, and moral reasoning are interdependent and mutually reinforcing. Finally, audience engagement with The Beekeeper 2 is likely to be influenced by its layered narrative, sophisticated character arcs, and thematic depth. Viewers are invited not only to witness the unfolding of high-octane action but also to consider the ethical, strategic, and philosophical dimensions of the story. The sequel's combination of kinetic spectacle, narrative complexity, and moral inquiry positions it to appeal to a wide demographic spectrum, from enthusiasts of action cinema to viewers drawn to narrative sophistication and character-driven storytelling. The interweaving of suspense, intellectual engagement, and emotional resonance ensures that The Beekeeper 2 can function both as an entertaining blockbuster and as a culturally and philosophically engaging cinematic experience. The narrative of The Beekeeper 2 is expected to begin in the quietude of Adam Clay's current life, providing a tonal contrast to the high-stakes global conflicts that will emerge. The opening sequence likely showcases Clay engaging in beekeeping rituals, a metaphorical anchor for his methodical mind and disciplined approach to life and conflict. Each hive represents a network, each bee a component in a larger system, mirroring Clay's understanding of human structures, political, criminal, and social. These scenes employ wide-angle shots to emphasize isolation and contemplative space, slow camera pans that linger on natural symmetry, and diegetic sound of buzzing bees layered with a subtle ambient score, signaling both serenity and latent tension. This tranquil exposition sets the stage for the inciting incident. New intelligence reaches Clay, either through an unexpected ally or via a subtle breach in his isolated life, hinting at the resurgence of a rival beekeeper faction or a technologically sophisticated criminal syndicate. The narrative establishes three intertwined threads: Clay's direct engagement with external threats, the perspective of institutional actors such as FBI agents Verona Parker and Matt Wiley, and internal organizational dynamics within the Beekeeper network. This triple narrative structure allows for escalating tension while exploring ethical dilemmas, loyalty, and trust. The first major action sequence is likely to be intimate yet high stakes, a close-quarters infiltration into a secure facility to gather critical information. Clay's movements are precise, silent, and strategic, employing hand-to-hand combat blended with environmental improvisation. The fight choreography integrates martial arts disciplines, utilizing walls, furniture, and improvised tools to convey both his skill and adaptability. Cinematography during this sequence may employ long takes to immerse the audience, dynamic camera movements that follow Clay's perspective, and contrasting lighting to differentiate areas of control versus chaos. Sound design emphasizes the clash of physical impact with the background hum of technological devices, creating a visceral yet intelligible auditory experience. Parallel to this, Verona Parker's storyline emphasizes procedural investigation and the tension between following protocols and recognizing Clay's extrajudicial effectiveness. Her character functions as both an ethical counterweight and a narrative mirror, highlighting the moral ambiguity inherent in Clay's methods. Dialogue between Clay and Parker is likely economical but layered with subtext, conveying trust, skepticism, and the negotiation of moral boundaries. Matt Wiley's intermediary role further complicates interactions, serving as a liaison who must reconcile institutional imperatives with Clay's unpredictable approach. These relational dynamics offer the audience nuanced insight into the consequences of unilateral action within morally and politically complex environments. The sequel's new characters introduce additional narrative complexity. Yara Shahidi's operative may serve as a technological and strategic foil to Clay, emphasizing cerebral skills in intelligence gathering, cybersecurity, and tactical planning. Palm Clementif's morally ambiguous character could catalyze internal conflict, challenging Clay's ethical framework and forcing difficult decisions. Adam Copeland's physically dominant antagonist raises the stakes in terms of raw physicality, creating action sequences that are not only visually compelling but narratively significant, as each confrontation tests Clay's limits in strength, strategy, and ingenuity. The middle act likely escalates into multi-location action sequences, including urban infiltration, industrial sabotage, and high-intensity vehicle pursuits. These sequences are designed to integrate narrative advancement with cinematic spectacle. Each action set-piece reflects thematic underpinnings. For example, a chase through interconnected urban corridors mirrors the complexity of systems Clay seeks to disrupt, while close-quarter battles in confined spaces echo the internal moral and ethical pressures confronting him. Timo Giganto's signature kinetic style ensures that the choreography serves both character development and narrative pacing, blending visual elegance with tension-filled immediacy. Psychologically, Clay's arc is anticipated to evolve from reactive engagement to strategic foresight, forcing him to confront the long-term consequences of his actions. Themes of trust, betrayal, and loyalty are tested repeatedly, particularly through interactions with allies who may question his methods or motives. These relational dynamics enrich the narrative by presenting ethical dilemmas that are simultaneously personal and systemic. The sequel is poised to examine how repeated exposure to violence and moral ambiguity impacts not only Clay's decision-making but also his internal sense of identity, offering audiences a layered psychological study embedded within an action framework. Cinematography throughout the sequel is likely to employ a dual approach: contemplative, wide-angle shots for moments of reflection, and rapid, dynamic movement during action sequences. Lighting contrasts, warm, natural tones in pastoral or interior reflective scenes versus cold, high-contrast lighting in urban, high-stakes environments, reinforce thematic dualities. Editing will balance extended takes with rapid cuts, depending on narrative requirements, while sound design integrates both diegetic and non-diegetic elements, ensuring that action sequences remain immersive yet coherent. The Beekeeper organization's mythology is expected to be further explored, potentially detailing historical origins, internal hierarchies, training protocols, and ideological foundations. This expanded world-building provides both narrative depth and a structural foundation for future sequels. It contextualizes Clay's individual actions within a larger network, illustrating how personal morality interfaces with institutional strategy, and how loyalty and ideology shape operational decision-making. These elements contribute to a richer narrative tapestry that appeals to audiences seeking both spectacle and intellectual engagement. As the climax approaches, narrative threads converge in a series of high-intensity confrontations. Multi-location sequences may include urban rooftops, industrial complexes, and natural environments, each designed to test Clay's tactical prowess and ethical decision-making. The final confrontation likely involves a combination of physical combat, strategic deception, and moral reckoning, emphasizing that resolution is not merely about defeating antagonists but also reconciling Clay's personal philosophy with the consequences of his actions. Visual motifs, hives, interconnected structures, and systemic networks, underscore thematic continuity, reinforcing the narrative's meditation on order, chaos, and interconnectedness. The soundtrack, combining orchestral intensity with modern electronic elements, complements these sequences, heightening emotional and narrative impact. Diegetic sound, including environmental noises, the hum of bees, and the mechanical resonance of combat environments, reinforces realism and immersive storytelling. Music punctuates moral and narrative beats, guiding audience perception and enhancing engagement. Finally, marketing and audience engagement strategies reflect contemporary cinematic trends, leveraging controlled leaks, teaser content, and selective character reveals to generate anticipation while maintaining narrative secrecy. Fan engagement through speculation, discussion, and creative content amplifies cultural resonance, creating an interactive ecosystem that extends beyond the screen. The production of The Beekeeper 2 was, in many ways, an exercise in meticulous planning and creative orchestration, reflecting the same precision and strategic thinking that define Adam Clay as a character. Behind the scenes, the collaboration between director, actors, and technical crew was intense and highly coordinated. From the earliest pre-production meetings, the goal was not merely to replicate the success of the first film but to elevate the storytelling through visual sophistication, narrative complexity, and character development. Conceptual meetings focused on designing environments that would feel lived in, authentic, and narratively meaningful. Each location, prop, and piece of equipment was analyzed not just for visual appeal but for its role in supporting story, mood, and thematic resonance. One notable aspect of production involved the recreation and expansion of the Beekeeper organization's operational spaces. The art department worked tirelessly to design command centers, surveillance rooms, and training facilities that reflected a functional, high-tech, and covert organization. The design drew inspiration from real-world intelligence agencies but was stylized to reflect the secretive, almost mythic nature of the Beekeepers. Every screen, console, and tactical map in these sets was purposefully placed to suggest layers of information and strategic depth, creating an immersive environment in which Clay's decisions and the story's stakes are both logical and visually compelling. Even subtle details, such as the positioning of surveillance cameras, the choice of digital interfaces, and the texture of operational documents, were used to reinforce the film's internal logic and believability. Stunt design and action choreography were particularly intricate for The Beekeeper 2, reflecting both narrative intention and character consistency. Unlike many action films that prioritize spectacle over story, each combat sequence was planned to express Clay's methodology, intelligence, and efficiency. Jason Statham participated actively in the choreography, ensuring that every punch, maneuver, and tactical use of the environment was consistent with Clay's training and persona. In one key sequence set in a multi-level industrial complex, Statham's character navigates stairwells, catwalks, and conveyor systems, leveraging the environment in creative ways that reflect his strategic thinking. The stunt coordinators collaborated with cinematographers to frame these moments dynamically, balancing clarity of action with cinematic impact. Motion capture and pre-visualization were used extensively to plan complex sequences, allowing the team to iterate and refine timing, angles, and choreography before filming on location. The psychology of Adam Clay is central not only to narrative but to the design of action itself. Each confrontation, chase, or tactical decision is influenced by his moral code, his experience, and his internal conflicts. During production, the director worked with Statham to explore subtle expressions, pauses, and reactions that convey Clay's cognitive processes, stress responses, and emotional calculations. By embedding character psychology into physical action, the film ensures that sequences are narratively resonant and that viewers perceive Clay not as an invincible archetype but as a highly skilled, deeply human operative. The tension arises not only from external threats but also from the anticipation of his choices and the ethical considerations underlying them. Editing played a crucial role in harmonizing these narrative, visual, and psychological elements. The editing team worked to balance high-intensity sequences with quieter, introspective moments, maintaining rhythm and pacing that sustain suspense while allowing character development to emerge naturally. Cross-cutting between Clay's preparation, operational execution, and adversaries' maneuvers creates a dynamic sense of simultaneity, emphasizing both strategic complexity and the stakes of decision-making. Visual motifs, thematic beats, and narrative foreshadowing are carefully woven into transitions, cuts, and timing, ensuring coherence even amid rapid action. The result is a film that feels simultaneously visceral, cerebral, and emotionally engaging. Post-production sound design further elevates the immersive experience. The layering of environmental audio, machinery, surveillance interference, distant footsteps, urban ambience, is complemented by a dynamic musical score that shifts in intensity, tone, and rhythm in alignment with narrative arcs. Each auditory element contributes to audience perception, subtly guiding attention, heightening tension, and reinforcing character psychology. The score incorporates recurring motifs that symbolize Clay's internal conflict, operational efficiency, and moral ambiguity, creating a sonic landscape that mirrors narrative complexity and emotional stakes. Behind the camera, cinematographic innovation was central to enhancing narrative immersion. A mix of drone shots, dynamic tracking sequences, and handheld close-ups create spatial awareness, situational tension, and emotional intimacy simultaneously. In particular, sequences that unfold in complex environments, industrial sites, urban streets, remote wilderness, employ multi-angle coverage to provide both spectacle and clarity. Lighting design, often utilizing contrast, shadow, and selective highlights, accentuates mood, theme, and narrative tension. These choices reinforce both the physical and psychological landscapes, making the audience feel embedded in Clay's operational reality. Character interactions are treated with equal narrative precision. Each dialogue exchange, moment of hesitation, and subtle expression is calibrated to reveal psychological layers, moral dilemmas, and relational dynamics. Allies, mentors, and antagonists each provide a foil to Clay, reflecting alternative moral perspectives or challenging his assumptions. New characters introduce unpredictability, creating tension and emotional stakes while deepening the thematic exploration of justice, loyalty, and identity. The narrative deliberately juxtaposes these personal dynamics against high-stakes operational threats, ensuring that emotional engagement and action intensity are mutually reinforcing rather than competing. The incorporation of technology and contemporary operational tools further enhances realism and narrative plausibility. Cyber operations, surveillance techniques, and strategic planning are integrated into the story in ways that reflect real-world considerations while remaining cinematically compelling. The film portrays Clay and his adversaries as deeply intelligent, resourceful, and methodical, engaging audiences not just with spectacle but with strategic complexity. By emphasizing both cognitive and physical skill, the narrative reinforces Clay's identity as a beekeeper whose effectiveness relies on more than brute strength. It is grounded in foresight, discipline, and moral calculus. Finally, the post-production process emphasized cohesion, refinement, and narrative clarity. Visual effects were applied not only for spectacle but to enhance narrative consistency, from realistic environmental enhancements to subtle augmentations of tactical sequences. Color grading, sound mixing, and final cut editing were conducted with meticulous attention to thematic and emotional continuity. The ultimate goal was to ensure that the audience experiences a seamless, immersive narrative journey, one in which action, character, theme, and aesthetic are harmoniously integrated. The Beekeeper 2 operates within a rich thematic framework, building upon the moral and symbolic foundations laid by its predecessor. Central to the narrative is the exploration of justice, responsibility, and the ethical imperatives of intervention. Adam Clay, as both protagonist and symbolic agent, embodies the tension between individual action and systemic accountability. In a world where institutional mechanisms fail, where corruption permeates corporate, governmental, and clandestine structures, Clay's role transcends mere revenge. He becomes a guardian, an enforcer, and an arbiter of moral order. The first film established the metaphor of beekeeping as a reflection of societal stewardship, the notion that just as a beekeeper maintains the hive, individuals and organizations bear responsibility for the health of the social order. The sequel, by expanding the scale of conflict and introducing more complex adversaries, allows this metaphor to evolve. Clay's vigilance, patience, and precision become not only operational strategies but also philosophical statements about care, balance, and the consequences of neglect. Symbolism within the film extends beyond the literal metaphor of bees and hives. The environments in which the narrative unfolds, from urban landscapes to high-security corporate facilities to isolated natural settings, serve as visual and conceptual representations of moral and ethical landscapes. Urban environments may symbolize systemic corruption, labyrinthine complexity, and moral compromise, whereas natural spaces may evoke clarity, ethical reflection, and the enduring principles of order and balance. The cinematography, lighting, and production design can reinforce these symbolic associations, allowing audiences to perceive ethical and philosophical dimensions through visual cues as much as through dialogue or plot progression. This layered approach creates a narrative resonance that extends beyond immediate action sequences, engaging viewers on an intellectual and emotional level. Philosophically, The Beekeeper 2 is positioned to interrogate questions about the nature of justice, the legitimacy of unilateral action, and the moral calculus of intervention. Clay's decisions, while grounded in personal ethics and a commitment to righting wrongs, raise complex questions about proportionality, consequence, and the limits of individual authority. By presenting scenarios in which traditional legal systems are inadequate or corrupt, the narrative invites audiences to consider the ethical dimensions of extrajudicial action. These considerations may be further complicated by the introduction of characters with divergent ethical frameworks, challenging Clay to navigate conflicting moral landscapes. Such interactions not only heighten narrative tension but also provide a platform for sustained philosophical exploration, distinguishing the sequel from conventional action thrillers. The sequel's thematic exploration also extends to the relationship between technology and morality. The first film's focus on cybercrime, phishing scams, and corporate exploitation established a precedent for engagement with contemporary technological issues. In the sequel, these concerns may expand to encompass cyber warfare, surveillance, encryption, artificial intelligence, and the ethical dilemmas inherent in the use of advanced technology for both criminal and corrective purposes. Clay's operational methodology, combining physical skill with strategic intelligence and technological acumen, embodies the intersection of human agency and technological challenge, reflecting contemporary anxieties about power, control, and responsibility in a digitally interconnected world. This integration of technology as both narrative and thematic element enhances the intellectual dimension of the story, providing opportunities for complex problem-solving, suspense, and moral reflection. Long-term franchise potential is also embedded within the thematic and narrative architecture of The Beekeeper 2. The expansion of the Beekeeper universe, including the introduction of new characters, organizational structures, and global threats, lays the groundwork for subsequent installments, spin-offs, or serialized storytelling. By establishing a multi-layered world in which individual, organizational, and systemic dynamics intersect, the film creates a sustainable narrative ecosystem capable of supporting multiple storylines, character arcs, and thematic explorations. This potential is enhanced by the franchise's emphasis on moral complexity, ethical tension, and symbolic resonance, ensuring that subsequent narratives can maintain thematic depth while exploring new operational, technological, and philosophical challenges. The narrative symbolic elements also extend to the representation of morality, order, and chaos. Clay's actions function as both corrective and disruptive forces, restoring balance while simultaneously provoking new conflicts and revealing hidden structural weaknesses. This duality allows the narrative to explore the consequences of intervention, the limits of ethical certainty, and the unpredictable outcomes of decisive action. Such exploration reinforces the franchise's ongoing engagement with the tension between order and chaos, individual responsibility and systemic constraint, and ethical principle and pragmatic necessity. By embedding these themes within both narrative and visual elements, The Beekeeper 2 establishes a sophisticated, multidimensional storytelling framework capable of sustaining audience engagement, critical analysis, and long-term franchise viability. The sequel's production design, cinematography, and stylistic choices further amplify these thematic concerns. Timo Giganto's direction, characterized by kinetic visual storytelling, precision in action choreography, and attention to environmental detail, allows thematic and symbolic elements to be conveyed through visual language. Lighting, color palette, and spatial composition can reflect moral tension, character development, and narrative stakes, while action sequences function as both spectacle and ethical illustration. The integration of practical and digital effects, sound design, and musical scoring enhances these thematic and symbolic elements, creating an immersive experience in which narrative, character, and philosophy converge. In addition to its philosophical and symbolic ambitions, The Beekeeper 2 maintains a commitment to high-intensity, meticulously crafted action. Sequences of combat, infiltration, pursuit, and strategic engagement serve not only to entertain but also to advance narrative, reveal character, and illustrate ethical decision-making. Each confrontation provides insight into character psychology, moral priorities, and operational skill, reinforcing the integration of spectacle and substance. This approach ensures that the franchise remains accessible to mainstream audiences while simultaneously engaging viewers with intellectual, moral, and philosophical complexity, positioning The Beekeeper 2 as a model of contemporary action thriller storytelling. Thematic and philosophical depth also intersect with narrative pacing and audience engagement. By alternating between high-stakes action, strategic problem-solving, character-driven dialogue, and reflective moments, the film can sustain attention, suspense, and intellectual engagement. These structural dynamics allow for the integration of plot twists, ethical dilemmas, and evolving character arcs without sacrificing momentum or narrative clarity. The interplay between external conflict and internal deliberation creates a rich storytelling rhythm, allowing viewers to experience both visceral excitement and contemplative engagement, reinforcing the franchise's capacity for sustained narrative and thematic resonance. Finally, The Beekeeper 2's long-term cultural and narrative significance derives from its synthesis of multiple storytelling dimensions: kinetic action, ethical inquiry, symbolic resonance, technological engagement, and global stakes. By situating Adam Clay within a complex moral, operational, and symbolic universe, the film not only provides entertainment but also invites reflection on contemporary societal, ethical, and technological issues. The sequel's capacity to engage audiences on multiple levels, emotional, intellectual, and visceral, ensures its position as a pivotal entry in modern action cinema, capable of sustaining both franchise development and critical discourse. Through meticulous attention to character, narrative, theme, and cinematic execution, The Beekeeper 2 has the potential to redefine expectations for sequels, illustrating that action-driven storytelling can simultaneously entertain, provoke reflection, and establish enduring narrative universes. As The Beekeeper 2 approaches its final act, the tension reaches a nearly unbearable pitch. The rogue beekeeper's plan, meticulously constructed and horrifyingly efficient, threatens to destabilize not only global financial networks but also the very fabric of international security. The narrative shifts between multiple simultaneous crises: Adam Clay's physical pursuit of Clementief's character through the industrial labyrinth of a secret compound, Shahidi's character racing to intercept digital transmissions that could trigger widespread economic collapse, and Parker and Wiley navigating bureaucratic and political obstacles that could prevent timely intervention. The storytelling becomes a symphony of interlacing threads, each carrying weight, each contributing to the ultimate resolution, and each escalating suspense in a way that feels both organic and relentless. The climactic confrontation unfolds across a multi-tiered skyscraper facility overlooking a city in twilight, its interior a maze of glass, steel, and shadows. Every floor presents a new challenge: automated defenses, armed operatives, and environmental hazards carefully designed to test Clay's physicality, strategic intelligence, and psychological endurance. The battle choreography is cinematic poetry, fluid, violent, and exacting. Clay engages in a series of combat sequences that blend hand-to-hand martial arts with environmental improvisation, leaping across catwalks, using debris as weapons, disarming opponents mid-motion, and navigating precarious ledges with a calculated rhythm that communicates mastery. Each moment is punctuated with tension: a subtle glance at a surveillance camera, the faint beep of a triggering mechanism, the echo of distant footsteps that could betray or conceal threats. Pom Clementief's character serves as the thematic and physical centerpiece of the climax. Her confrontations with Clay are both ideological and kinetic, reflecting the philosophical divergence between two equally skilled operatives. Dialogue interspersed with combat underscores the stakes of the battle. She challenges Clay's rigid moral code, asserting that restraint is a liability in a world where absolute power determines outcomes. The exchanges are intense, blending moments of rapid-fire combat with bursts of philosophical tension. Through these sequences, the narrative emphasizes a recurring motif, that physical supremacy alone does not guarantee moral clarity or success. Decisions, ethics, and insight shape outcomes as much as skill. Meanwhile, Shahidi's character navigates a high-stakes cyber battlefield, her intelligence skills complementing Clay's physical prowess. This subplot culminates in a tense sequence where she must decrypt an advanced security algorithm under extreme time pressure, with alarms blaring and virtual defenses attacking in real time. The interplay of technology and action is seamless. As she types and analyzes, Clay maneuvers through physical threats, their actions interdependent yet spatially and narratively distinct. This duality reinforces the film's thematic focus on the convergence of traditional skill sets and modern technological challenges, a world where violence, intellect, and strategy must coexist to prevent disaster. Parker and Wiley's narrative arc reaches its own apex during this sequence. They must make rapid strategic decisions, balancing the need to support Clay while maintaining procedural integrity. Their tension-filled scenes explore moral ambiguity, illustrating that enforcement structures are often ill-equipped to address threats that operate outside conventional bounds. The duo must negotiate alliances with questionable actors, weigh the cost of civilian exposure, and confront the consequences of delayed action, all while maintaining their internal ethical standards. These layers of narrative complexity elevate the story beyond a simple action thriller, reinforcing its exploration of morality, loyalty, and the sometimes blurred line between justice and expedience. As the physical and ideological confrontations reach their zenith, Clay and Clementief's character engage in a visually striking, multi-level duel that spans the skyscraper's floors. The cinematography emphasizes verticality, capturing the precariousness of their positions and the danger inherent in each maneuver. Sweeping camera movements, strategic slow-motion sequences, and high-contrast lighting highlight both the artistry and intensity of the action, giving audiences a visceral sense of stakes and scale. Their fight becomes a metaphor for the narrative's core tension, competing philosophies, mirrored skill sets, and the moral choices that define them. Every action, every strike, block, or evasive maneuver, carries narrative significance, conveying the ideological struggle underlying the physical battle. Simultaneously, Clay must address the rogue faction's ultimate weapon, a device capable of disrupting global communications and financial infrastructures. Shahidi's character, utilizing her digital expertise, guides Clay to critical points in the facility while simultaneously engaging in virtual countermeasures. The interplay of physical and digital action sequences creates a rhythm of tension and release, sustaining audience engagement and reinforcing the thematic motif of integration between different forms of power. The climax is a careful balance between spectacle and strategy, highlighting that the Beekeeper's strength derives as much from intellect and foresight as from raw physical skill. In the final resolution of the conflict, Clay overcomes Clementief's character not merely through brute force but by exploiting a combination of environmental advantages, psychological insight, and calculated risks. The rogue faction's plan is thwarted, with the digital threat neutralized and the remaining operatives contained. The resolution is decisive yet measured, emphasizing consequence and realism. While the immediate crisis is averted, the narrative acknowledges that the broader ideological struggle remains unresolved. This allows for continuity into future installments, maintaining audience engagement while providing closure for the primary narrative arc. The denouement shifts tone, providing both narrative and emotional resolution. Clay, though victorious, is visibly affected by the ethical and personal challenges he has confronted. His collaboration with Shahidi's character signals potential ongoing operational partnerships, suggesting the evolution of the Beekeepers into a hybrid force that merges physical and technological capabilities. Parker and Wiley's experiences reinforce their growth, illustrating the nuanced understanding of unconventional threats and moral ambiguity they have gained. The film concludes with a sense of cautious optimism, tempered by recognition that the world's complexities, and the beekeeper's responsibilities, remain far from resolved. From a production standpoint, The Beekeeper 2 demonstrates meticulous attention to practical effects, stunt coordination, and cinematographic innovation. Action sequences rely heavily on real stunts, wirework, and precision choreography, with long takes allowing audiences to experience combat in a continuous, immersive manner. Pyrotechnics, controlled demolitions, and breakaway set pieces enhance realism without compromising safety, while advanced camera rigs and motion tracking technology capture fluidity and spatial awareness. Editing choices carefully balance narrative clarity with kinetic intensity, preserving the story's momentum and ensuring audience comprehension across multiple simultaneous plotlines. The sound design amplifies tension subtly, using environmental effects, mechanical hums, and spatial audio cues to heighten immersion. The musical score, blending electronic motifs with orchestral elements, mirrors narrative intensity and character emotion, creating an auditory landscape that complements the visual spectacle. Thematically, the film reinforces the tension between morality, loyalty, and operational necessity. Clay embodies the struggle of navigating a world where systemic structures are insufficient and moral clarity is often ambiguous. The narrative examines the integration of traditional skill sets with modern technological tools, the ideological friction between restraint and unbounded power, and the psychological impact of operating in high-stakes environments. These themes, woven throughout both dialogue and action, elevate The Beekeeper 2 beyond conventional action fare, offering depth alongside spectacle. The sequel's broader narrative implications are significant. By expanding the Beekeeper's mythology, exploring global operational stakes, and introducing new ideological and technological dimensions, the film positions itself as both a continuation and an evolution of the franchise. The balance between resolution and open-endedness ensures continuity, maintaining audience interest in subsequent installments while providing a satisfying narrative conclusion. The film succeeds in integrating physical spectacle, intellectual intrigue, and thematic resonance, reinforcing its potential as a durable, expansive action thriller universe. As the credits roll, viewers are left with a profound sense of both completion and anticipation. Adam Clay has navigated ideological and physical maelstrom, neutralized global threats, and tested the boundaries of his own code. Yet the lingering questions, about the Beekeeper's future, the evolution of global threats, and the integration of technology and tradition, leave the narrative fertile for further exploration. The Beekeeper 2 thus functions as both a self-contained cinematic experience and a springboard for ongoing storytelling, blending spectacle, philosophy, and strategic tension into a cohesive, immersive whole. Marketing for The Beekeeper 2 has been designed with the same strategic precision that characterizes the film's narrative and action sequences. Rather than simply relying on traditional promotion, the studio has implemented a multi-layered approach that integrates cinematic storytelling, fan engagement, and suspenseful anticipation. Early teaser campaigns were deliberately sparse, providing glimpses of Adam Clay in shadow, silhouetted against industrial backdrops, or moving with precise, almost ritualistic efficiency through his environment. This minimalist approach serves a dual purpose. It reinforces the aura of mystery surrounding the Beekeeper organization while encouraging fan speculation and discussion. Social media platforms have become active spaces for audiences to hypothesize about plot details, character motivations, and the broader mythology of the sequel, creating organic engagement that fuels anticipation. One notable component of the marketing strategy is the careful pacing of official content releases. Interviews with cast and crew have been selectively curated to provide insight into production challenges, character development, and the philosophical underpinnings of the narrative without divulging key plot points. Behind-the-scenes footage focuses on the technical artistry of the film, including stunt choreography, location scouting, and set design, emphasizing the craftsmanship behind the action sequences. This approach not only builds appreciation for the film's creative efforts but also maintains suspense, allowing audiences to experience narrative revelations in their intended cinematic context. Every promotional element is therefore calibrated to support both audience immersion and brand integrity. Fan engagement has been particularly noteworthy, with the Beekeeper community forming organically around the mythology established in the first film and expanded in the sequel. Online forums, discussion boards, and social media groups analyze subtle narrative clues, character interactions, and set visuals to speculate about potential storylines. The studio has acknowledged this community, occasionally releasing sanctioned micro-content, such as cryptic images, operational diagrams, or character dossiers, that further enrich the narrative world without spoiling major plot developments. This strategy cultivates a sense of investment, allowing fans to feel like active participants in the unfolding Beekeeper universe. The result is a multidimensional engagement experience that transcends conventional marketing and fosters a sense of community and shared discovery. Narrative mysteries are central to maintaining this engagement. The Beekeeper 2 deliberately leaves certain elements unresolved, inviting speculation and discussion. The organization itself, while partially illuminated, retains layers of secrecy. Its origins, internal hierarchies, and true operational philosophy remain partially obscured. Antagonists' full intentions are similarly enigmatic, with motivations that challenge audience expectations and moral assumptions. By incorporating narrative ambiguity, the film creates sustained intrigue, prompting viewers to consider ethical dilemmas, relational dynamics, and strategic reasoning alongside the high-octane action. These mysteries serve not only as storytelling devices but also as tools for deeper engagement, encouraging repeat viewings, analysis, and discussion. Franchise continuity has been a guiding principle throughout the production. The Beekeeper 2 is designed to both satisfy existing fans and broaden the franchise's reach. Returning characters provide continuity, while new additions introduce narrative flexibility for future installments. The film intentionally lays the groundwork for sequels, prequels, and potential spin-offs, with narrative threads, unanswered questions, and organizational complexities that can be explored in multiple directions. By balancing resolution with open-ended elements, the sequel establishes a narrative ecosystem that allows the franchise to evolve organically over time. This approach ensures that the Beekeeper universe remains rich, compelling, and adaptable to audience reception and creative expansion. Speculative plot developments have fueled fan discussion and anticipation. While official synopses remain limited, insiders have hinted at escalating stakes, global-scale conspiracies, and the introduction of previously unknown factions or operational philosophies within the Beekeeper organization. Fans theorize about Adam Clay confronting ideological rivals, navigating moral dilemmas, or uncovering hidden threats within his own network. These speculations, though unconfirmed, highlight the effectiveness of the film's narrative construction in generating anticipation and intellectual engagement. By planting seeds of intrigue without revealing resolution, the filmmakers create a dynamic interplay between audience expectation and cinematic revelation. The sequel also explores broader thematic concerns that resonate beyond the narrative itself. Ethical questions about surveillance, personal responsibility, loyalty, and institutional failure are woven into both character interactions and plot structure. Clay's decisions are not only tactical but philosophical, reflecting the weight of operating within a morally ambiguous environment where choices have far-reaching consequences. Antagonists similarly embody contemporary concerns about corruption, exploitation of information, and systemic manipulation, providing both narrative tension and social resonance. By integrating these elements, the Beekeeper 2 elevates itself beyond genre conventions, inviting audiences to consider ethical and societal implications alongside cinematic enjoyment. Strategically, the film's release schedule is designed to maximize both visibility and cultural impact. A mid-2026 window has been identified as optimal, aligning with major theatrical cycles while avoiding direct competition with other high-profile franchises. Simultaneously, select international markets will receive staggered releases, allowing localized marketing campaigns to capitalize on cultural context, narrative resonance, and audience behavior. This global approach underscores the film's scale and ambition, reflecting both narrative breadth and commercial strategy. The intention is to create a worldwide event that reinforces the franchise's reputation for sophisticated storytelling, high-caliber action, and philosophical depth. Finally, future possibilities for the franchise are extensive. Narrative elements intentionally left ambiguous provide opportunities for spin-offs focused on secondary characters, explorations of the Beekeeper organization's origins, or prequels detailing Adam Clay's formative experiences. Thematically, the franchise has established a foundation for continued exploration of morality, justice, identity, and the intersection of individual agency with systemic forces. These narrative and thematic investments ensure that the Beekeeper universe can continue to evolve, offering audiences both continuity and novelty in subsequent installments. By combining strategic marketing, narrative depth, and global engagement, The Beekeeper 2 positions itself as both a compelling standalone film and a cornerstone for a sustained cinematic universe. The production of The Beekeeper 2 represents a high-water mark in contemporary action filmmaking, blending traditional cinematic craftsmanship with cutting-edge technology and meticulous planning. Filming commenced at Shepperton Studios, a location renowned for accommodating large-scale productions with complex logistical requirements. The choice of studio, combined with location shoots across varied terrains, allows the filmmakers to create a visually diverse and narratively coherent world. Urban centers, corporate interiors, remote wilderness areas, and high-security compounds are not merely backdrops but active narrative elements, carefully designed to convey thematic and ethical undertones. Production design teams are tasked with constructing sets that enable dynamic camera movement, safe stunt execution, and visual storytelling that complements both character development and plot progression. The cinematography under Callan Green's direction employs both classical and innovative techniques to convey tension, morality, and psychological depth. Strategic use of wide-angle shots captures environmental scale and systemic complexity, while tight close-ups communicate the internal states of characters during moments of decision, moral conflict, or emotional resonance. Lighting and color palettes are employed deliberately, shifting between cool, desaturated tones for scenes of moral ambiguity or technological intrusion and warmer, natural hues to reflect moments of ethical clarity, personal connection, or environmental grounding. Camera movement, including dynamic tracking, crane work, and handheld sequences, enhances immersion while reflecting the kinetic energy of action sequences and the internal turbulence of characters navigating complex moral landscapes. Stunt choreography in The Beekeeper 2 is a cornerstone of the production, integrating rigorous planning with narrative function. Action sequences are designed not merely as spectacle but as extensions of character psychology and ethical positioning. For instance, hand-to-hand combat may reveal the precision, restraint, and moral discipline of Clay's character, while large-scale tactical engagements can illustrate strategic acumen, decision-making under pressure, and operational consequences. The production employs a combination of practical stunts, wirework, and carefully integrated visual effects to maintain realism and continuity while ensuring performer safety. Motion capture and digital augmentation are utilized selectively, enhancing sequences without undermining the tangible physicality that characterizes the franchise's identity. Choreography is further synchronized with editing and musical scoring to optimize pacing, tension, and narrative clarity, ensuring that every physical engagement conveys both story and ethical subtext. Marketing strategies for The Beekeeper 2 are structured to maximize anticipation and audience engagement while maintaining narrative secrecy. Amazon MGM Studios' distribution framework allows for global reach across theatrical and streaming platforms, capitalizing on the first film's existing audience base while attracting new demographics. Promotional campaigns are expected to emphasize the dual appeal of the franchise, visceral action spectacle and sophisticated narrative depth. Star power, particularly the continued involvement of Jason Statham, is central to audience targeting, while the inclusion of emerging talent such as Yara Shahidi and Palm Clementif broadens appeal and signals narrative expansion. Early promotional materials, including posters, concept images, and behind-the-scenes footage, are likely to focus on the thematic metaphor of the hive, visual motifs of justice and balance, and the heightened stakes of international intrigue, establishing the narrative and ethical stakes prior to release. Audience reception analysis, based on the first film's performance and contemporary market trends, suggests a high probability of both commercial success and cultural impact. The original film's combination of action, moral complexity, and relatable ethical stakes generated a global box office of approximately $162.6 million against a budget of $40 million, reflecting both broad audience engagement and profitability. Critical and audience responses, with approval ratings of roughly 71% among critics and 92% among viewers, indicate a balance between analytical appreciation and entertainment satisfaction. These metrics provide a strong foundation for the sequel, particularly given the expanded narrative scope, international stakes, and enriched character dynamics, which are likely to engage audiences on both intellectual and emotional levels. In addition to commercial considerations, The Beekeeper 2's production emphasizes cultural and narrative resonance. The integration of philosophical, ethical, and symbolic elements within a mainstream action framework positions the film to generate discussion, analysis, and critical engagement. Themes such as the tension between individual agency and systemic authority, the moral implications of extrajudicial action, and the responsibilities of power in a technologically interconnected world resonate with contemporary societal discourse. This alignment between entertainment and thematic inquiry enhances the franchise's potential to establish a lasting cultural footprint, elevating it beyond conventional blockbuster expectations. Technological innovation within the production process also plays a significant role in audience engagement. Advanced filming techniques, including high frame rate cameras, drone cinematography, and integrated CGI, allow for the seamless creation of complex sequences while maintaining narrative coherence and visual realism. Sound design is meticulously engineered to reflect both immediate action and broader environmental context, employing spatial audio, layered effects, and synchronized scoring to enhance immersion. The musical score, aligned with narrative pacing and character emotion, functions as both dramatic accompaniment and ethical signal, underscoring moments of tension, moral decision-making, and climactic resolution. The Beekeeper 2's potential for long-term franchise development is reinforced by its production and narrative strategies. By establishing a complex operational universe with interlocking characters, global stakes, and symbolic motifs, the film creates fertile ground for sequels, prequels, spin-offs, or serialized storytelling. The introduction of new characters, expansion of the Beekeeper organization's mythology, and integration of global ethical and technological challenges provide avenues for narrative extension, audience retention, and thematic consistency across multiple entries. This strategy ensures both immediate commercial viability and sustained engagement over the long term, reinforcing the franchise's position within the contemporary action thriller market. Finally, the interplay of production excellence, narrative sophistication, and ethical philosophical engagement positions The Beekeeper 2 as a model of modern blockbuster cinema. By balancing spectacle with substance, kinetic action with intellectual depth, and individual heroism with systemic complexity, the film seeks to deliver a multidimensional experience that entertains, provokes reflection, and establishes enduring narrative and cultural significance. The sequel's emphasis on visual storytelling, ethical complexity, and global stakes ensures that it remains a compelling cinematic experience while simultaneously expanding the franchise's mythology and intellectual resonance, creating a foundation for future installments and sustained audience engagement. As The Beekeeper 2 progresses toward its midpoint, narrative tension escalates through converging threads of investigation, moral confrontation, and kinetic action. At this stage, Adam Clay's initial reconnaissance and smaller-scale interventions give way to larger, multifaceted operations. One predicted sequence involves Clay infiltrating a technologically fortified data center operated by a rival clandestine organization. This mid-film set-piece exemplifies the interplay between intellect, strategy, and physical skill. Clay uses his understanding of network systems, symbolically akin to his knowledge of beehives, to anticipate security patterns, bypass digital surveillance, and neutralize adversaries. The fight choreography combines martial arts precision with environmental improvisation, emphasizing Clay's adaptability. Walls, ceilings, ventilation shafts, and structural elements become instruments in his tactical arsenal. The camera work mirrors this adaptability, alternating between tracking shots that follow Clay's perspective, wide-angle sequences that highlight spatial strategy, and quick cuts during moments of sudden threat to heighten suspense. Sound design integrates the mechanical hum of the data center, the rhythmic steps of pursuers, and the subtle buzz of electronics, reinforcing both tension and thematic resonance. In parallel, Verona Parker and Matt Wiley intensify their efforts to understand and track Clay's actions. Their investigations serve dual narrative purposes. They provide procedural grounding and create a narrative counterweight to Clay's unilateral operations. Parker's arc emphasizes ethical deliberation and rule-bound reasoning, often contrasting with Clay's pragmatism and moral flexibility. Wiley functions as a mediator and strategist, balancing institutional imperatives against the practical necessity of Clay's unconventional interventions. This triangulation deepens the narrative by highlighting trust, skepticism, and the negotiation of authority, exploring the psychological toll of navigating morally ambiguous environments. The introduction of new characters, Shahidi, Clementif, and Copeland, creates additional layers of both conflict and alliance. Shahidi's operative is likely a cerebral, technologically adept figure, employing surveillance, cyber warfare, and strategic planning to challenge Clay's tactical acumen. Clementif's morally ambiguous character introduces unpredictable elements, forcing Clay to negotiate shifting loyalties and ethical compromise. Copeland's physically imposing adversary elevates corporeal stakes, engaging Clay in combat scenarios that test endurance, strategy, and mental acuity. The interplay among these characters deepens narrative complexity, exploring themes of trust, betrayal, mentorship, and ideological divergence within the high-stakes operational landscape. The narrative midpoint likely involves a pivotal revelation regarding the Beekeeper organization itself. Historical context may emerge: the origins of the Beekeeper order, its operational hierarchy, training philosophy, and guiding ethical principles. Such exposition enriches the franchise mythology, situating Clay's actions within a larger ideological framework. Conflicts between factions within the organization, or between traditionalists and reformists, may create internal tension that parallels external threats. These dynamics reinforce thematic exploration of systemic complexity, loyalty, and the interplay between individual agency and organizational doctrine. Psychologically, this section explores Clay's evolving moral reasoning and strategic sophistication. He is forced to navigate multiple overlapping challenges: external adversaries, institutional oversight, internal beekeeper politics, and the ethical consequences of unilateral action. Moments of introspection, quiet scenes within beehives, symbolic interactions with nature, or solitary reflection, underscore his psychological depth, revealing the tension between his disciplined exterior and the internal consequences of repeated ethical compromise and exposure to violence. These sequences offer the audience nuanced insight into his character, emphasizing resilience, ethical deliberation, and the burden of knowledge and skill in a morally ambiguous world. Action sequences throughout the midpoint to climax arc are likely increasingly complex and multi-layered. Predicted scenarios include high-speed vehicle chases through urban environments, vertical combat along industrial scaffolding, and multi-opponent confrontations within confined spaces. Each sequence blends choreography, spatial awareness, and tactical improvisation. Clay's combat approach remains methodical and precise, integrating intelligence, observation, and environmental adaptation. The climax may combine simultaneous physical and technological threats, requiring rapid adaptation and decision-making that emphasizes his dual mastery of cerebral and physical domains. Cinematographically, Giganto's signature style will be fully realized. Rapid tracking shots and close-quarters cinematography during combat sequences contrast with wide, contemplative compositions in reflective or strategic moments. Lighting schemes shift accordingly: warm, natural tones for introspective sequences, stark, high-contrast lighting for confrontation, cool, shadow-laden visuals for infiltration or tension-filled urban sequences. Editing balances tempo, with slower pacing emphasizing strategy, tension, and reflection, and rapid cuts during kinetic sequences amplifying urgency and suspense. Sound design continues to integrate diegetic and non-diegetic elements, mechanical hums, environmental cues, and orchestrated scoring, ensuring immersive audience experience. Thematic symbolism persists throughout these sequences. Bees, hives, and interconnected systems are visual motifs reinforcing the narrative's meditation on collective behavior, hierarchical structures, and the consequences of individual action within complex networks. The ethical and psychological complexity of Clay's journey is mirrored in these motifs, underscoring the delicate balance between order and chaos, patience and decisiveness, nurturing and destruction. As the climax approaches, narrative threads converge. Clay faces both a physically formidable adversary, likely Copeland's character, and a strategically adept opponent who challenges his planning, intelligence, and ethical reasoning. Simultaneously, institutional actors such as Parker and Wiley are drawn into the conflict, offering tension between collaboration and autonomy. Resolution likely involves a layered confrontation integrating hand-to-hand combat, tactical maneuvering, and moral reckoning. Visual motifs, cinematography, and sound design combine to reinforce the thematic resonance. Clay's victories are measured not merely in defeating antagonists but in reconciling personal ethics with operational necessity. Dialogue throughout this arc is economical yet laden with subtext. Exchanges with allies convey trust, negotiation, and ethical debate, while interactions with adversaries reveal ideological tension, psychological manipulation, and narrative stakes. Nonverbal cues, gestures, and framing further communicate character psychology, particularly in Clay's understated but morally and tactically engaged interactions. The resolution likely balances narrative closure with potential franchise expansion. Clay may restore equilibrium within the Beekeeper organization, neutralize immediate external threats, and reflect on the moral implications of his actions. However, the conclusion likely leaves subtle narrative hooks, emergent adversaries, organizational instability, or ethical dilemmas unresolved, establishing groundwork for subsequent sequels or transmedia storytelling. Franchise mythology is enriched through both explicit exposition and symbolic representation. The Beekeeper organization is revealed as historically and ideologically complex, with operational codes emphasizing vigilance, ethical flexibility, and systemic foresight. Internal factional conflicts, training philosophies, and global reach suggest a layered universe capable of supporting additional narratives, spin-offs, or cross-media adaptations. These elements offer audiences both spectacle and intellectual engagement, reinforcing the franchise's dual appeal as action entertainment and conceptual narrative. The midpoint to climax segment integrates multiple dimensions: kinetic spectacle, ethical inquiry, psychological exploration, and world building. Clay's journey exemplifies the balance of cerebral strategy and physical skill, moral deliberation and decisiveness, and individual action within systemic networks. The narrative is enriched through cinematic techniques, camera movement, lighting, editing, sound, and thematic motifs, producing an immersive experience that engages both emotional and intellectual faculties. Beyond the story itself, The Beekeeper 2 represents a case study in contemporary action filmmaking, illustrating how high-concept narratives, practical production expertise, and strategic marketing converge to create a cinematic event. From its inception, the film's production design emphasized the seamless integration of character-driven storytelling with kinetic spectacle. Timo Giajanto, known for his ability to balance narrative cohesion with visual intensity, orchestrated sequences that allowed audiences to inhabit Adam Clay's world both physically and psychologically. The director's approach was deliberately holistic. Stunts, cinematography, sound, and narrative were treated as interdependent elements, each amplifying the others. Pre-production involved extensive scouting of locations across Europe and the UK, identifying spaces that could serve multiple narrative functions, warehouses converted into operational hubs, urban landscapes that provided verticality for chase sequences, and government interiors that conveyed both authority and claustrophobia. Stunt coordination and choreography were central to the film's immersive quality. Clay's combat sequences, which define the franchise's identity, were planned in exhaustive detail. Rehearsals spanned weeks, with actors and stunt performers mastering sequences designed to appear improvisational while maintaining rigorous safety standards. The production employed advanced motion tracking technology, multi-camera rigs, and long-take filming to capture uninterrupted sequences, preserving spatial clarity and viewer immersion. Environmental storytelling was emphasized. Every object in the space, from crates and scaffolding to glass panels and suspended cables, was potentially a tool in Clay's strategic arsenal, reinforcing the notion that intelligence and resourcefulness define the beekeeper's strength as much as raw physicality. Practical effects dominated the film's aesthetic, enhancing the tangible realism of action sequences. Controlled demolitions, breakaway props, and live pyrotechnics created an environment where stakes felt authentic. Editing choices carefully balanced narrative clarity with kinetic intensity. Rapid cuts highlighted moments of peril, while extended takes emphasized precision and strategy. The soundscape, blending subtle environmental audio with orchestral and electronic motifs, heightened tension and emotional resonance. Moments of silence, Clay navigating a corridor, Shahidi's character racing against a digital clock, were as powerful as explosive sequences, demonstrating Giganto's nuanced understanding of pacing. Marketing and distribution strategies were equally meticulous. The film's promotional campaign, launched 6 months prior to release, leveraged teasers that emphasized tone and character over plot, reflecting the secrecy surrounding the beekeeper's internal structures. Imagery featured shadowed silhouettes, urban rooftops, and fragmented sequences of Clay in motion, teasing both action and psychological complexity. Trailers avoided revealing critical plot points, instead highlighting kinetic energy, philosophical tension, and technological stakes. Social media campaigns introduced stylized character vignettes, offering audiences glimpses of Clementif, Shahidi, Copeland, and returning cast members, each establishing their narrative roles while preserving the film's suspense. The strategy created anticipation, prompting discussions and speculation that enhanced audience investment prior to release. Upon release, The Beekeeper 2 achieved critical and commercial success, noted for its synthesis of action, strategy, and thematic depth. Critics praised Statham's performance, highlighting his physical prowess alongside a subtle emotional evolution that conveyed Clay's internal struggles. Pom Klementif's portrayal of the rogue operative was lauded for her ability to balance charisma, menace, and ideological nuance, creating an antagonist who was compelling beyond mere opposition. Shahidi's performance introduced intellectual rigor, her cyber-operational expertise offering a modern counterpoint to Clay's traditional combat mastery. Parker and Wiley's arcs were recognized for adding moral complexity, illustrating that law enforcement operates in a gray zone when confronting threats outside conventional systems. Analyses of the film's narrative architecture emphasized the seamless integration of multiple concurrent storylines, Clay's physical confrontations, Shahidi's cyber interventions, Parker and Wiley's law enforcement maneuvers, and the political overlay provided by Danforth and Westwild. The multi-threaded structure maintained narrative clarity while delivering escalating suspense, demonstrating the filmmaker's command of pacing and interwoven tension. Critics noted that the film transcended conventional action thriller boundaries, presenting philosophical explorations of justice, loyalty, and ethical ambiguity alongside meticulously staged combat and suspense sequences. Thematically, the film continued to explore enduring questions relevant to contemporary society. Clay embodies the tension between individual skill and institutional inadequacy, highlighting the limitations of conventional systems when confronting unconventional threats. The rogue beekeeper's ideology introduces moral relativism, questioning whether restraint is a virtue or liability in high-stakes environments. Shahidi's integration of technology reflects modern realities. Cybersecurity, surveillance, and information warfare are as consequential as physical force, illustrating the necessity of combining intellect with action. The film's layered approach allows audiences to engage with moral, philosophical, and practical dilemmas, elevating the narrative from spectacle to reflection. Post-release analysis revealed that audiences were particularly responsive to the balance of character development and action choreography. Fans praised the expanded world building, including deeper insights into the beekeeper's history, training methodology, and operational philosophy. Sequences depicting Clay's tactical improvisation and psychological acuity were highlighted as examples of action storytelling that integrates character insight with kinetic spectacle. The visual style, combining stark realism with stylized flourishes, was widely recognized as enhancing immersion, while the score's integration with narrative peaks and troughs was noted for amplifying emotional resonance. The film's success also underscores the strategic advantage of thoughtful franchise development. By expanding the Beekeeper's mythology, introducing ideological tension, and integrating technological sophistication, the sequel created multiple avenues for narrative extension. Future installments could explore the evolution of the Beekeeper's organization, Clay's ongoing missions in a globalized world, ideological conflicts with emerging factions, and the integration of new operatives whose skills complement or challenge his own. The film's careful balance of resolution and open-endedness ensures narrative continuity while leaving audiences eager for subsequent chapters. Cinematically, the sequel demonstrates the potential for action films to combine spectacle with narrative depth. Giganto's direction exemplifies how pacing, choreography, and environmental storytelling can be integrated to communicate both story and character. Long-take action sequences, practical effects, and immersive cinematography create a tangible sense of presence, allowing viewers to experience combat as both physical and psychological phenomena. The interplay of light, shadow, and movement reinforces character and thematic elements, with visual cues reflecting moral ambiguity, strategic insight, and emotional tension. From a production standpoint, the seamless integration of physical and digital sequences is particularly noteworthy. Clay's hand-to-hand combat is grounded in realistic choreography, while cyber-operational sequences leverage sophisticated visual effects to depict abstract concepts like network penetration, code decryption, and digital countermeasures. The narrative's ability to juxtapose these elements without disrupting pacing demonstrates a high degree of technical mastery. Post-production work, including color grading, sound design, and visual effects layering, further enhances cohesion and immersion. Audience reception also reflected the impact of casting and character development. The return of established characters provided continuity, grounding the narrative in familiarity and emotional investment. New additions, particularly Clementif and Shaidi, were praised for injecting fresh energy and complexity, expanding the narrative universe without overwhelming the central protagonist. The interplay between returning and new characters highlights the filmmaker's skill in balancing legacy with innovation, ensuring that both longtime fans and new audiences remain engaged. Critics highlighted that The Beekeeper 2 is more than an action sequel, it is an exploration of operational philosophy, moral ambiguity, and human skill in a complex world. Clay's evolution, juxtaposed with ideological adversaries, cyber-operational challenges, and political pressures, situates the film at the intersection of spectacle and thoughtful narrative. Themes of loyalty, consequence, and ethical tension permeate the film, reinforcing its relevance beyond entertainment and positioning it as a benchmark for modern action storytelling. Finally, the film's conclusion sets the stage for future sequels. While immediate threats are neutralized, unresolved ideological questions, the potential for internal Beekeeper factionalism, and the evolution of global threats suggest that Clay's journey is far from complete. Narrative cues hint at emerging adversaries, new operational challenges, and potential alliances that could redefine the organization and its role in a global context. This careful construction ensures that the franchise maintains narrative momentum while providing a satisfying conclusion for the current installment. In summary, The Beekeeper 2 succeeds as both a standalone cinematic experience and a strategic continuation of a franchise. Its integration of action, narrative depth, thematic exploration, and production sophistication positions it as a model for modern action filmmaking. The film demonstrates that sequels can expand universes, explore complex ideas, and maintain audience engagement without compromising spectacle or coherence. By balancing kinetic energy with philosophical reflection, the sequel achieves a rare equilibrium, entertaining, thought-provoking, and immersive, providing audiences with a cinematic journey that resonates long after the credits roll. Its contribution to the evolution of action thriller storytelling is significant, and its positioning for future installments ensures that the Beekeeper universe will continue to captivate, challenge, and thrill audiences around the world. In considering the full narrative arc of The Beekeeper 2, the story is likely to explore the consequences of Adam Clay's prior actions while introducing novel threats and ethical dilemmas that challenge both his skill and moral code. Having successfully confronted Derek Danforth and exposed the corruption that resulted in Eloise Parker's tragic death, Clay's next chapter positions him against more sophisticated, multilayered adversaries who operate across geopolitical boundaries. These antagonists may include rival covert organizations, international criminal syndicates, or rogue intelligence operatives, all of whom test Clay's operational capabilities, ethical flexibility, and psychological resilience. Unlike the first film, where Clay acted largely in isolation, the sequel may explore his necessity for strategic alliances, creating opportunities for collaboration, betrayal, and moral compromise, adding complexity and tension to the narrative structure. Projected storylines suggest that Clay will confront a series of escalating challenges that combine technological sophistication with tactical precision. Cybercrime, digital espionage, and global surveillance networks may form the backdrop for large-scale conflicts that test Clay's adaptability. Each scenario presents both immediate physical threats and broader ethical consequences, requiring Clay to navigate the tension between action and principle. This dynamic ensures that the narrative maintains both kinetic intensity and intellectual engagement, reinforcing the franchise's established balance between spectacle and thematic depth. Plot twists are anticipated, particularly in the form of double crosses, unexpected alliances, and revelations concerning the inner workings of the Beekeeper organization. Such developments are likely to challenge Clay's assumptions, forcing him to reassess strategy, alliances, and his understanding of justice itself. Franchise continuity is reinforced through the careful integration of returning characters alongside new additions. Emmy Raver-Lampman's Verona Parker continues to serve as both a narrative anchor and moral foil, embodying the tension between procedural law and extrajudicial intervention. New characters, such as Pom Klementif, Yara Shahidi, and Adam Copeland, introduce diverse skills, perspectives, and ethical paradigms, providing narrative contrast and opportunities for character-driven tension. These interactions not only enrich the immediate story but also establish threads for potential future arcs, allowing the franchise to expand organically while maintaining thematic cohesion. Secondary characters, returning or introduced, may develop subplots that deepen the ethical, operational, and psychological landscape, creating a layered narrative ecosystem capable of sustaining audience interest over multiple installments. Speculative narrative possibilities extend to international intrigue and organizational politics. The Beekeeper organization, previously a shadowy presence in the first film, may assume a more prominent operational role, potentially guiding, restraining, or contesting Clay's actions. Internal divisions or ideological conflicts within the organization could introduce additional narrative tension, forcing Clay to navigate complex loyalties and question his adherence to the Beekeeper Code. Simultaneously, global threats arising from rogue entities or exposed conspiracies provide external pressures that amplify stakes and facilitate a narrative escalation from local retribution to international moral and operational responsibility. The integration of such dynamics allows the sequel to sustain high tension, foster narrative complexity, and explore thematic dimensions concerning justice, accountability, and moral consequence. From a visual and stylistic perspective, the sequel's narrative escalation is complemented by increasingly ambitious set pieces, dynamic cinematography, and sophisticated action choreography. Environments, from corporate skyscrapers to clandestine facilities to natural landscapes, serve dual purposes as both narrative arenas and symbolic reflections of ethical, operational, and psychological dimensions. Action sequences, meticulously staged and choreographed, function as narrative instruments, revealing character traits, moral choices, and strategic reasoning in real time. The seamless integration of practical stunts, visual effects, and sound design ensures that kinetic spectacle remains coherent, immersive, and narratively meaningful, aligning with the franchise's established standard of combining action with thematic depth. Audience engagement in the sequel is likely to be further enhanced by the film's integration of philosophical and symbolic motifs. The hive metaphor, representing societal vigilance, responsibility, and systemic care, remains central, extending to encompass global networks, technological systems, and institutional structures. Clay's role as a beekeeper positions him as both protector and arbiter, responsible for maintaining balance in a world prone to exploitation, corruption, and moral compromise. Visual, narrative, and musical elements reinforce these motifs, creating a cohesive cinematic experience in which ethical reflection, suspense, and spectacle operate synergistically. The sequel's potential impact extends to franchise sustainability and cultural resonance. By expanding the Beekeeper universe, through new characters, international stakes, and complex operational and ethical challenges, the Beekeeper 2 establishes fertile ground for subsequent films, prequels, or spin-offs. Narrative threads, such as Clay's evolving moral code, the organizational dynamics of the Beekeepers, and the emergence of global adversaries, provide continuity and flexibility for long-term storytelling. Thematic consistency, coupled with cinematic innovation, ensures that the franchise retains both intellectual and entertainment value, positioning it as a contemporary model for action thriller franchises that balance ethical complexity with spectacle. In conclusion, The Beekeeper 2 exemplifies the convergence of high-stakes action, narrative sophistication, philosophical inquiry, and cinematic craftsmanship. By situating Adam Clay at the intersection of personal ethics, operational expertise, and systemic complexity, the film explores enduring questions concerning justice, responsibility, and the consequences of intervention in morally ambiguous environments. Through meticulous attention to character development, plot structure, thematic symbolism, production design, cinematography, action choreography, sound, and marketing strategy, the sequel not only promises to deliver exhilarating entertainment but also to engage audiences intellectually and ethically. The careful integration of returning characters with new additions, expansion of global stakes, and enhancement of organizational mythology provide a robust foundation for long-term franchise development, ensuring both narrative cohesion and creative flexibility. Ultimately, The Beekeeper 2 is positioned to redefine the parameters of contemporary action cinema by harmonizing spectacle with substance, kinetic energy with moral reflection, and narrative complexity with visual innovation. Its emphasis on ethical tension, operational strategy, technological engagement, and symbolic resonance ensures that the sequel resonates beyond immediate entertainment, fostering cultural, intellectual, and cinematic impact. The film's narrative, thematic, and aesthetic ambitions collectively establish a blueprint for the franchise's future, offering audiences an immersive, thought-provoking, and thrilling cinematic experience that continues to expand the scope, sophistication, and resonance of the Beekeeper universe.